Welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange Podcast. Stories by leaders for leaders to help you raise the bar on your own excellence, to release the potential inside of you. Now, here's today's podcast. Greetings, it's Hugh Ballou and Russell Dennis again for another great session of the Nonprofit Exchange. And as usual, we have a really cool person as a guest today. And so we're just going to kind of get right into it. So Russ, how are you today?
I'm fabulous out here in the Mountain West. It's a beautiful sunny day. It's a little bit cooler. We've gotten much needed moisture. And life is as good as each of us lets it be, whatever the weather's doing.
You're always an inspiration. Our guest today is Dom Faussette. We met just a couple of 3 weeks ago, and we just, a couple of days, we decided we want to keep talking. So I invited him on our podcast because his message is so unique. So Dom, welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange.
Hugh and Russ, thank you very much for the invite. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So I know a little about you. And of course, Russell does really good research before we have a guest. But there's a lot of folks that are wondering now, Dom, I don't know about Dom. So tell folks, who is Dom? Give us your story.
All right, let's kind of high-level overview. Dom Faussette is my name, as I was introduced by Russ and Hugh. I have a company called Think, React, Lead, but where did that come from? How did all of this come about? Well, from the age of 5 all the way through, well, even now, I stutter, and it's something that I've learned to deal with or overcome, if you will. Once I got out of high school, I joined the military, and I became K-9 in the Air Force. Once I got out of the Air Force, I became a police officer, and I was a police officer in Jackson, Mississippi. I did my time there, and things didn't, let's just say this, being a police officer is not as easy as it might look on television. Growing up, a lot of people, as a kid, I wanted to be a police officer. Oh, that looks like fun. It would be a great job. You see some things that change who you are as a person. And sometimes first responders engage in certain things that change adversely their life or somebody else's life. And when those things happen, some police officers or first responders stay. I chose to put my 2 weeks notice in. And I jumped into the corporate space, really not knowing what I was doing, but I did very well in the corporate space. And I was in corporate leadership for approximately 14 years. And after my book launched, my podcast launched, I realized, you know what? I have a good base of clients. The book of business is good. I'm traveling and speaking. I can hang up my corporate sneakers and jump into this pool of entrepreneurship. The pool read 2 feet, but I think the 2 zeros next to that 2 were missing. So when I jumped in, I just sank and sank and sank and sank and sank. But here we are, 13 months later, and I'm starting to come to the top. Well, at least my mouth and nose are above water, so it's a great place to be.
Wow. Now, you mentioned book and website, so give us a hint what those are.
My book, it's my first book. It's Think, React, Lead When Success and Accomplishments Aren't Enough. And I wrote that based off things I saw in law enforcement, things I saw in the corporate space. You see some successful people get pulled out on stretchers because of heart attacks, but by way of stress, or you unfortunately, you respond when somebody has taken their own life. And on the outside, it looks like they have everything. And when you get a chance to hear all these stories, and then your story in itself isn't as bright as maybe it appears to be externally, when success and accomplishments aren't enough, that is why I wrote the book. And then my website, Think, React, Lead. And Think, React, Lead spawned from a company that I currently have called Leaders for Leaders. And the mantra for Leaders is think as an executive, react like a soldier, and lead. And that, for me, it's a culmination of my life. And as long as I'm thinking, I'm reacting and leading, I stay in my lane and I stay mission focused.
there's a lot of overlap here. We are champions at Center Vision Leadership Foundation for transformational leadership. And transformational leadership was defined in the 1980s by two writers, Burns and Bass. And a lot of it is about the context of leadership as a culture, which would be, in my case, a symphony orchestra, but it could also be a military. You have clear objectives and you have tactics to get there. Plus you have a highly skilled team that's rehearsed.
Right.
And so I'm amazed at working with organizations. Russ and I have probably 100 years collective working with organizations. But anyway, many years of working with organizations, I'm really surprised at how few leaders understand how to look at the long-term objective and create the tactical piece and then rally the troops around it to get to those objectives. So we're speaking to clergy and nonprofit leaders in this podcast, and you're a clergy as well. You're ordained and have a church.
Yes.
And you're also a speaker, an author, and I think you serve as a coach for leaders.
Yes, I'm an executive coach, a speaker coach. Yes, sir.
Great. See, Rusty says, sir, that's respecting my age and mental condition.
We just can't make it through a broadcast without that excuse.
He's running on his
I
day.
think we've made it through 2 in 18 months that I've been co-hosting.
But he did say so. So anyway, he's very polite. So in the military, in your police, we have a lot of work that some of these leaders in these social benefit organizations might relate to. You have really high-level skills. You have a really clear mission. And you have a lot of people that don't understand the importance of your mission. So there's a lot of pushback. So what are some of the biggest leadership gaps you see today in any field?
Based off my experience in the corporate space, there's the start to put the tactics together, as it was mentioned, to engage in, let's call it a mission or a process for an end result. And then we'll go and gather the troops. What I have found to work best, and actually it's less stressful, is by leveraging my team well before I start the tactics and I start the mission. If I start from the beginning, so ground zero, build a foundation with my team and gain their insight. The reason why I do that is because I'm huge on diversifying my associations. In the workplace, I'm only able to think by way of my childhood, my law enforcement experience, my military experience, a little bit of college experience, and any other corporations that I've worked for up to that point. Whereas if I leverage 20 other people, I'm leveraging their past experiences as well. So as we converge and we plan out, so we have a planning session, then I get their buy-in as they're sharing their ideas. So I take employee number 5 and I implement a small idea. And employee number 17 and implement a small idea. And then we go to our phase 2 of a planning section where we have more things and objectives dialed in as they come to a place where they're adding value. So their leadership shows. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And as their leadership shows, guess what's happening? We're cultivating a relationship. Now my direct reports are beginning to trust me as a leader, but I haven't really done much. All I've done was brought my people together and created more of a familial atmosphere, familial environment. So when we finish all of the planning and now it's time to implement, I don't have to tell anybody what to do. Everybody knows their lane, if you will. And everybody, for the most part, should have buy-in because everybody has had a voice in the process.
Russ, we've had, Dom and I had just a few conversations, and we escaped the conference we were in and went and got us a quick sandwich. And in that short conversation while we were away, I discovered we had lots of resonance. And what you may not be aware of, Dom, is you just articulated what we do in Center Vision Leadership Foundation. And especially, it's really important with nonprofit boards. The planners and the doers are the same.
Right.
And so the leader, there's nowhere in the Bible that God gave a vision to a committee. So the leader has the vision. You can't escape that. This is my vision for leadership. But then we employ all of those skills, just like you articulated, to create the strategy. Now, we don't go into tactics until we understand the long-term objectives, and then we'll build strategies around it. So there is where we build the synergy of the team. And then there's where we start doing our rehearsals, if it's in music terms, or our drills in military terms.
Right.
We perfect the systems to integrate the strategy, which is a piece of paper, into performance, which is the tactical piece. So it's a concert, it's a play, it's a military tactic. So you are so spot on with what we teach and what we represent at Center Vision. Russell, you've been spending some time listening to his podcast and looking on his site. I'm sure you got a really good question that's percolating up there, or you have some observations about Dom and what we talked about so far.
Well, it's really scary because I've been working on an article series, and what he's teaching these are high-powered executives he's working with, and you know, they go through and they do all of these things, and somewhere along the line they never ask themselves, what's that one thing? Mm-hmm. They didn't stop to choose themselves, and they're wildly successful by somebody else's measure, and that's something that's missing. Is that one thing. They never stopped and asked themselves what really matters to them. And that's you know, that's really different, you know. That's a critical question for a nonprofit leader to ask, because there are a lot of people counting on you.
Right.
So what is that one thing? And if you miss that, you leave half your potential on the table.
I would agree. Totally agree.
The other thing, though, is that, you know, great leaders and transformational leaders build other leaders. And you just articulated that so well. It just makes your life easier. I don't understand why someone would resist, you know. Hey, look at it this way. If your team's really good, you can cut that 80-hour work week down to 30 and leave early on Fridays, you know. Why don't some leaders want that? Have you kind of gotten a sense of why some are there?
I have from my perspective. See, I arrived to that strategy, but before I got there, I was just a people person. Coming into the corporate space and having what some would deem as a successful career, there were times where I was still dealing with PTSD, and I was dealing with things that I had to deal with. I mean, I had a great salary, but I would go home and sometimes I would sleep in my closet just because that was a very small space that I could control. But then I'd have to go into work with a smile on my face. One thing I learned as a police officer is that people, one, when you get called, nobody wants you around. There's something adverse going on, but those people still have to keep a roof over their head, food on the table, so they go to work. Well, employees that I've had, that could have easily been them. Sometimes it was them. And when you're the only ex-cop in a building of 4,000 people and you're a leader, people tend to share stories with you and have a lot of questions for you. And when you start to hear things or get asked, you know, what do I do? I found, 3 pounds of weed in my 14-year-old son's closet. Or what do I do? My daughter came home. She's not talking to me. I think she was molested. These are like real conversations that I'm having on a sales floor. And my life experience allowed me to connect with these people. And I had an employee come to me one time who's typically late. And it didn't bother me that she was late, because I know typically when somebody's late, there's something other than their being tardy going on in their life. And she told me that sometimes her husband would take a mini blowtorch to her inner thigh as a form of abuse. So when I began to see these people, and I'm going to do a side note here, some leaders forget what it's like to live check to check. Some leaders forget what it's like to wake up and your lights aren't turned on. Some leaders forget what it's like to not be able to afford diapers your children, or have to make the decision between food or gas for your car to get to work. And some leaders forget that their workforce is barely making it. And it's for us as leaders to encourage and inspire and motivate those around us, not jump down their throat because their numbers are off. That's not our job. So as I built relationships with my peers, and I was very active on social media. So, and I would tell them, like, I have nothing to hide in my life. If I post it, like, you're more than welcome to friend request me, unless it was a regulation issue with the company I work for. But it has never been for me, and I've worked for some pretty decent sized banks. And then I got to the point of just, hey, can you help me out with this? And when you have employees that have masters, maybe double masters, PhDs, hello, I'm going to utilize that. Like, I'm going to leverage their expertise. I don't have them, so what? And just like you said, why would I overthink it? I have 3 brains for people who want to prove themselves to the whole company. All right, I don't want to prove myself to the company. You guys come on in and let's put some white papers together. Let's do let's strategize and build the business and build out what the future looks like. And from, it's that Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And for me, it really wasn't influence. It was really how to win friends, because I was just as lonely as they were. So we worked well together.
Wow. Wow. Russ, do you have something else brewing there?
He's thinking.
Well, I like that. I like a little silence, a little silent. There's a lot of power in silence, by the way.
There is.
I start my day with 30 to 45 minutes of it, just to kind of notice where I'm at. And that's a big piece of being a leader, is being reflective and noticing where you're at. Not necessarily having any judgment around it, but just noticing it. And as I've improved my skills at noticing where I'm at, my perception or my intuition around where other people is has improved. And, we've got our regular physical senses, the sight, sound, touch, smell, and hearing.
Right.
But we have 6 other inner senses that don't really get a lot of press. Their imagination, intuition, will, reason, memory, and perception. And all of those inner senses come out in ways that we're not always conscious of.
Very true.
As a leader and in observing leaders, talk about how some of the leaders you've come across might use some of those inner senses.
I really think it comes from understanding your why. And yes, that's and sometimes an exaggerated phrase, but my why is because I want to change one life every day for the rest of my life. And that's been my why for 4 years now. And I think leaders don't deal with stress well, whether they're a leader, a CEO of a small business, or they're in a large corporation. I'm a firm believer in leading from the inside of your door before you attempt to lead on the outside of your door, because I have learned through trial and error that if home is right, life is right. So life is work, play, vacation, friendships. And we spend so much time investing in school so that we can promote, investing in certifications so that we can promote, going to seminars and luncheons and networking events so that we can promote. We're always trying to kind of butter up, the people above us and impress them so that we can promote. But when we come home, we don't try to impress our spouses. We don't try to impress our children with our character traits. I'm talking honesty, integrity, loyalty, and service. And if we were to just, I would say, flip that on its head and start the impressing and start the networking and start the luncheons and start the effective communicating at home, right? And starting the fake smiles at home as opposed to doing it at work all day long, we would find that we have less stress in the workplace, and we're more sincere, we're more authentic as leaders, which is a buzzword in the industry, and we're more vulnerable. I mean, I've gone to work, and this was one of the pivotal moments of me connecting with my team. I was in a meeting, and it was one of those moments. I think I was going to be late for work. I left, and my wife and I don't argue, but I didn't leave right. And I got to work, and we had a 2-hour meeting, and I just said, hey guys, gals, I'm sure I'm the only one this has ever happened to, and I live 10 minutes down the road. I said some things to my wife this morning that I shouldn't have said, and I was like, I didn't curse her out, I didn't call her out her name, but I didn't feel right as I left. If you don't mind, can you run the meeting? I'm going to go home real fast. I'll be back in less than 30 minutes. But when I came back, the look in their eyes, like, wow, like he's a real person just like us. And I started to share with them, yes, I don't have to have all the answers. The 15 of us might not have them for a day, but guess what? There's tomorrow. It's okay. And making employees feel comfortable around you, giving them your full attention, the same way you would for those of you that are married. Remember when you first met your spouse, like day 1, hour 1, minute 1, you gave her or him all of your attention because there was a connection there. There was a like. If you just like your employees, it's not their job to like you. It's your job to like them and give them something about you to like.
Well, sometimes, Dom, in my world, there's a lot of answers, and there's a discernment period to figure out what's the right answer, or maybe the next right answer among those.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a discernment piece, and I think we leaders have too much pressure in thinking, hey, we have to have all the answers. When no, if the team's going to own it, just like you're talking about, they need to participate in sorting through the options and coming up with the answer that would serve the needs of the organization and not only individual needs.
Right.
So yeah, this is really good stuff. So the motto you got behind you: think, react, lead. How did you arrive at those 3 words to define you?
It stemmed from a couple situations, all the same type of situation, but in short, there were times that I would kick in a door to either serve a warrant or just get to the other side of the door. So I'd breach a door, and I was under the assumption that there was 2 people inside based off intel I received or whatever I saw from the outside going in. And then when I kicked in the door, there'd be 3 or 4 people sitting in there, which in that moment, I don't have the luxury of saying, you know what, guys, I'll be right back. Obviously, there's more people here than I expected. I'm going to go get some bigger guys than me, a little bit more artillery, and you guys just sit still. Like, that's not something I can do. So in the moment, right before you kick in the door, you think, right? And the moment your foot touches the door and the door kicks in, you react. Now, you may not be reacting based off what you thought, but your training positions you to react because it's either them or it's me. And you see 2 people, you know how to react. If you plan on 2 and there's 4, you still know how to react. And what I have found is that reacting comes from your emotions. So we typically, in my experience, we react to training. We react to things we've learned. We react to things inside ourselves, our intuition. Intuition would be kicking in the door. You see, 2 guys over here unarmed, 2 guys over here. One has a handgun. The other guy has a rifle. The rifle's kind of shaking, and the guy with the handgun is still. Well, I'm going to engage the guy with the handgun first because the other 3 to me aren't really threats in that moment. And that to me is reacting. And as you react and take action, that's leading. Leadership is influence, as I've stated. Now, the influence in this scenario is me coming out on top, is me scaring the individual so much with just my sheer presence that I'm able to obviously still be alive to this day. And I wouldn't suggest that on anybody else. Like, that's not really the proper way to do that. And that's a very out there example, but that's where think, react, lead stem from. And as I kind of got softer in life, which it took me forever to get here, but a more relatable person, right? Not so externally tough. I've applied it in a way that others can just apply it to their lives. Okay, think. Let's not spend a lot of time here. So decision making. How many of us have gone to, of course, none of you, but how many of us have gone to McDonald's and we've seen the same menu year after year after year, minus the McRib? It doesn't change, but we stand there and we're looking at this menu. Well, make a decision. See, thinking and making a decision, those to me kind of go hand in hand. And then as we learn to implement decision making and being okay with our decisions that we make, we get more comfortable with thinking and reacting to the thoughts that we have. And we become a leader in all aspects of our life.
What I've heard often, and part of what we teach, is to respond. You know, sometimes leaders react in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
Their emotions are triggered and they do something that actually creates negative results unintentionally. So so you're helping me rethink this. If you build the culture, have cultural norms, have very sound principles that you're gonna use, then part of what we do is we have old habits, and it's time. I mentioned rehearsal before.
Right.
It's time to rehearse some new routines, so then you're reacting to some of those cultural norms. And you know, when a platoon drills together, and you've been in combat and in the military and in the police force. So
not in the military, just like close quarters combat in the police force, but not in the military.
Okay, but there's a bonding that happens when you're with your colleagues in that kind of setting, and
oh yeah,
and there's a norm of functioning together because of, and we don't have that in the corporate or the nonprofit workspace, because we're not unified in what we're doing together. So part of that bonding is the reactive piece in a positive way. So I'm being challenged here to rethink the contrast between react and respond. So let me kick it back to you and ask why you chose react rather than respond.
I chose react over respond because respond it in law enforcement. If I get a call, 2 Alpha 5, go ahead, 2 Alpha 5, shots fired on the street of First and Second or First and Central. Responding is just getting there. Like if I just show up in my police car, I'm responding. But reacting is what happens when you get there. And that's why I chose react over respond. Respond to me is a softer word. It's the approach. It's almost the bridge between thinking and reacting. You think, and then your body goes to respond. But the goal here is to eliminate the response. So you mentioned negative emotions. Well, if you address those emotions and find ways to either get rid of them one by one or utilize them in your favor for others, then you won't respond negatively. Or as I challenged some of my leaders to do it in the past, was go throughout the day without saying I. If you can go an hour without saying I, all of your conversations will be about the other person, all of them. And that is a habit I created. And I learned that when I was K9. When you're deployed with your K9, your dog, I had a military working dog, you don't get to talk to anybody else. It's just you and your dog. There's no partners. Well, that is your partner. And when we talk to our dogs or our pets, we don't say I. Like, it's so simple. We walk into the house after a long day. Oh my gosh, how are you? Okay, maybe that's not my voice. May not be your voice. But we get on our knees or we pick up the dog and we talk to them as though they can respond. But they are responding, right? They're tail wagging, their tongue hanging out of their mouth. They're showing you that they love you. We don't talk to our pets with, I did this and I am this and I am so awesome and I hate my life and I don't like. We don't do that with our animals. So why should we do it with people? If we were to treat, and I'll say this so it's not taken the wrong way, if we were to treat people with the same love that we treat our animal, or even a dog running across the street, we'll stop traffic and be late to work just to get a dog out of the street. Yet we won't stop our negative emotional traffic to help out a human.
Interesting juxtaposition. So Russ, what are you thinking here?
You know, I get that with the difference between react and respond, because responding assumes that I've got time to decide how I show up. Reacting, a leader doesn't always get time. I mean, look at the type of crisis that can show up for a nonprofit. For example, you could be running a daycare or some organization that works with children, and you find out that one of the children's been molested. You got to do something. You got to take action right then and there. You don't always have time to work quickly. But by building certain responses, it's really how you show up as a person. And first by choosing yourself, and that's what Dom did. He first chose himself, then asked, what's that one thing? What is that one thing that I've got to do? And as a result, he's got a way for leaders to improve themselves. He's put practices in there that work. And it's really, a lot of these things are difficult because of their absolute simplicity. I think
Yes.
It escapes us because it's so simple. But,
Right.
you know, if I want to get along, and here we go, the I word, but to build better relations with other people, trying to be the person that my cat thinks I am might be the way to go, because our pets don't put any conditions on. They just love it. They just say, you know, I would love to have other people feel that way when I walk into a room. I suspect a lot of us would. And how can I make other people feel that way?
Oh yeah.
Without letting them off the hook for things that they're responsible for? That's encouraging them to choose themselves and to find out what that one thing is, and to bring that all together and what we're trying to do together. And that's the mission of a nonprofit. What is that one thing that we've got to do? And sometimes that's the only thing that can break up some office drama or get us through log jams with complications. Go back to the one thing. And it keeps people from getting stuck in conditions and getting stuck in ruts. And going back to the whole traffic analogy, you know, some days I think people just get out of bed to be on the highway at a certain point to get in my way. And then I remember, you know, 99.99% of what people do doesn't have anything to do with me. So choosing myself is taking that larger view and saying, okay, don't have to take this personally. How do I show up? It's really about how do I show up? And people make commitments to other people they won't make to themselves, which is probably why your program is needed, especially among these power brokers who drive, succeed. Mm-hmm. And there's just that something, that gut-wrenching something. Never chose themselves, never really focused on what's that one thing.
I think, I'm sorry, go ahead, Hugh.
No, go ahead.
You know, when we ask ourselves, hopefully we ask ourselves, what's that one thing? One of the things I have found, a question that I've asked that is challenging for people is, who are you? Right? You know, where I grew up, you know, if something didn't go right, who do you think you are? Like, that was a question. and immediately, if you either answered it as you combated that situation, or you didn't, which it makes you look a certain way. And that means you lost. But I've asked people, who are you? And they'll start, you know, I'm a CEO, I'm an executive, I'm a graduate from this person, you know, this place, that, and the other. And they go down these list of things that I'm like, you named 12 things. I can take all of those and put them on somebody else. Your school, your husband, your father. I can put, those are titles, I can put that on somebody else. And they'll kind of give me this perplexed look, and I'll ask, when is the last time you were happy? And I had an executive, a young lady, well, she was 40, and she said, the last time I was happy was Christmas morning. When I saw my kids open these gifts and this, that, and the other. I said, I love the answer, but if I were to give those gifts to your kids, would their response be the same? Not 100%, but very close to 100%, it would be. And I said, were you happy, or were you seeing the fruits of your labor and you were happy for them? I said, when's the last time you were happy? And she thought about it, and she could not come up with an answer. I remember, most American males have owned a bike, and we remember our first bike. And then we remember learning how to do a wheelie on the bike. And then we remember doing the wheelie in front of the neighborhood girl that we like. Like, that happiness in that moment, or whether you shot a basketball, you made a hoop, something in front of some girl that you liked at your school, it happened to everybody. Like, that is like that's happiness. But as we get older, we lose that. And I had a psychiatrist just tell me, she said, when is the last time you were happy? And that's where I got that question from. I said, I don't know. Like, I'm not here to be happy. And now I was a little frustrated. I was a little angry. And that's why I was there, but whatever. And she just said, when is the last time you were happy? And I said, you know what? Like, my dad used to skateboard. I used to skateboard. That made me happy. She literally told me to go purchase a skateboard. And I went and purchased a skateboard. You can't skateboard angry. Like, it's just a horrible look. Like, it doesn't go. You look constipated. So I kept skateboarding, and I remember the first time, like, I just smiled just because, and it just felt good. And it's simple. It's those simple things, but we forget to bridge the gap between our mind and our heart, because we spend so much time on a syllabus, kindergarten all the way through college, however long that is. And then we try to do that in the corporate space, or in the space you guys operated in, right? The nonprofit space. It's all here. And then we end up losing ourselves. And the only way that we know how to be of value is by validating who we are. That's why our conversations start with I. I remember I used to start all my conversations with, it'd come up in the first 30 seconds. Oh yeah, I'm a cop. Yeah, I'm a cop. I'm a cop. I'm like, that sounds so dumb, hindsight. But we do that in the nonprofit. I graduated from blah, 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 summa cum laude. Like, who cares? We're all here. So your summa cum, whatever it was, didn't get you anywhere. It got us here. We're all in the room, and none of us really know what we're doing. We have a team that some of us don't like each other, and we don't know how to say, we don't know how to effectively communicate. We don't know how to get along, and it's costing us money. But we're smiling.
It's interesting when you go to a social gathering, how far into the conversation before somebody says, so what do you do? I want to know who you are first.
Right.
And what you do is not who you are.
Right.
I experienced Dom Faussette as a person that's precise. You're definitive, you're focused, and even the three words that you chose. So walk us through those three words, because that's that is begging or inspiring or focusing us to being precise. Think, react, lead. So walk us through those 3 points and why those are important.
So I break them down into percentages, and think my goal as I'm working with people is to have a whole situation, and for you to think, react, lead through it. Think should be about 5% of your time spent, like on a good, when you're dialed in, 5% of your time. Reacting should be 80% of your time. The leading part should be 15%. And the reason why I utilize those, again, thinking is decision making. Make a decision, be okay with the decision, and move forward. Growing up, I was, starting at the age of 11, I was not allowed to use the words, I don't know. So I just, anytime my mom asked me a question, I had to think about my answer. She would say, you can't say, I don't know. And I got the hint shortly thereafter. But I grew up in the 80s, a different time period, but I was not allowed to say, I don't know. So now I don't say, I don't know. I come up with an answer, and whatever my answer is, I take that and I react. Now the reacting part, that's where the intuitiveness comes into play. That's where the fortitude comes into play. That's where the additional decision-making comes to play. This is where the fervor, the hard work, the effort, the integrity, right? All those character traits, they come into play, because every left, right, left, or left, right, left, every step that you take is a closer step to accomplishing a goal. And as you're doing this, you're creating this level of influence around you. And again, leadership is influence. So that leads me into that last 15% of Think, React, Lead, which is lead. Leader or leading is more of the after effect of what you've done during your reacting period. And it's almost like that's where you leave your legacy, or this is where now your troops are following you. Your staff is following you. Your direct reports or your leadership is following you. And this is where you're an influence. And this is more of a heartfelt space, because the work's been done. Now it's enjoying the fruits of your labor. You're leading through that phase or that process.
Oh, very well put. So you go back to when you paused after the word influence. Say a little more about leadership and influence, would you?
I got that phrase from John Maxwell. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I use it often because subconsciously we allow ourselves to believe that a position is leadership. No, a position is just a position. It's what you do in the position that allows you to have true influence. Yes, initially, if I get hired by an organization and they introduce me as chief technical officer, yes, that title is going to give me a certain level of influence. But just like the honeymoon phase, it goes away pretty quick. Like, you got to do something during that time frame, that first week or two, to prove to your staff, your employees, just the people you work with, your peers, that you are truly a leader, not by way of your position, because anybody can fill a position. Everybody can't do the position the way that a great leader does it. Somebody who is influential. A person should be able to walk into a room and be so dialed in on who they are, but acknowledging so much who the people in their environment are, so their room, their boardroom or office, that they just lead with their heart. Like, how many times have either one of you heard somebody say, you know what, like, there's just something about you? And they say it with this face of sincerity, this feeling of they're in awe, because it's refreshing to meet somebody like you. You just seem trustworthy. I'm working with the CEO out of Santa Barbara, and I fly out there every couple of months to do staff development. And apparently she's been watching my videos on Instagram, and she messaged me the other day, can we just have a three travel time agreement? She said, it took me too long to find somebody that I can trust. I'm not letting you go. We will continue to work after this. And that to me was great, because online it's very hard to decipher who is who. But I found if you're consistent and just be comfortable with who you are, as long as who you are is who you see yourself being 30 years from now, that's who you attract. I'm vulnerable and I'm authentic. I talk about, the fact that I stutter and I have Tourette's. Like, those are things I'm comfortable talking about. I talk about them because I'm not the only one. Everybody has something. I just don't hide mine. And the more you can become comfortable with who you are as a leader, and the more you can share some of your faults and not where you graduated from and all of your wins, the more you'll connect with people and you'll be a greater influence.
Very well put. Very well put. We as people of influence shape the cultures that we lead. And if we're not leading with authenticity, it's going to come back to us inauthentic and, the reflection of what we're representing. There's a saying that the orchestra, if they respect the conductor, they play exactly as the conductor intends. If they do not respect the conductor, they play exactly as the conductor conducts.
Ooh, and that's true in leadership. That goes across all boards.
What they see is what I get in terms of a choir and orchestra. So it's a reflection of the leader. So those are a lot of really good points. We got time for another couple of questions. Russ, do you want to shoot one in before I hit him hard?
Well, yeah, I'm supposed to be the neighborhood bully, but I guess you've decided to seize control of that whole thing. It's okay. It's your show. I'm just kind of hanging out here, yeah. But the one response to that thing that you talked about when people meet you and there's that something, yeah. The proper response for that is thank you. And a lot of people sort of miss that. They feel that they have to go behind and convince. These folks are already sold on you. There's no sales job to be done. There's no convincing to be done. But sometimes folks have to convince themselves that what others are saying is true. So this authenticity just kind of leaks out. It's not something that you can manufacture or something that you can hide. And it comes out of choosing yourself and thinking about that one thing that can connect you to people. And it's really about relationships and connection. That's what's really important, especially in the climate now where people are sniping at one another. And
right.
We seem to be losing that ability as a general population to just talk to one another. And I don't think that's true. I think the vast majority of people are pretty common, they get along. Those that can't just so happen to be the noisiest and they have a megaphone.
Right.
But right now, it's really about connecting with people on the deepest level. And where do you find these leaders who have maybe missed the boat somewhere on either choosing themselves or figuring out what that one right thing is? Where do they have the most difficulty when it comes to relationships?
I have found that leaders find difficulty in establishing relationships. It's so simple because they haven't acknowledged who they are. And I'm going to use this as an example. I had it wasn't a client. He was just somebody. I can say we're friends, but somebody I knew, and this was his struggle. He's a firstborn, 6'3", blonde hair, blue eyes, Caucasian male, and he played sports in the Midwest. Society says he has to be great. Like at everything he does, he can't fail. And we were in the corporate space, and he said, "Look, man," he said, I know I can say this to you, and we'll be fine. He said, there is an organization within an organization for everybody but me. I can't speak my mind, which I don't have much on my mind to speak about, but I can't say much because I'm a 6'3", blonde hair, blue-eyed, white guy with a master's. But nobody sees that I'm a regular dude that connects with anybody from anywhere. And his individual struggles were he never wanted to play football in high school. He never wanted to be forced to be a leader in his community. He never wanted to be the captain of the football team in college. He never wanted to be thrust into leadership. And I think there's so many people, depending upon where you are in certain regions and maybe your background, cultural or ethnic, what have you. But I think some people are thrown into leadership before they're ready, and they don't know how to say no because their life has been mapped out for them. And then they hit about 35. And this is what I've seen. Around 35 is when they start finding extracurricular activities like a girlfriend or even a boyfriend. They buy a motorcycle. They do things that society says is not the norm, but it's not that it's not the norm. They're trying to figure. It's like they're a 5-year-old kid again. They're trying to figure out who they are. I'm not condoning cheating on your spouse. I would definitely condone buying a motorcycle because I race Ducatis. But they're trying to find out what it is that makes them happy. I mean, I met a lady. Actually, she was an old boss, and she was 44. Same process throughout life. And then one day she said, "You know what? I want to be an EMT." I mean, she had the Porsche Cayenne, she had the Porsche 911 Carrera, she had the nice house, the marriage, the whole nine. She became an EMT, and now I think she has like a small little boutique or antique shop in Colorado somewhere. But she's happy, and I bet she'll live so much longer now than she would have if she would have stayed the course. And I think we get so successful. To me, success is not monetary; it's a feeling. But we attribute money to success. So we become so successful with the things that we allow our friends, and guys like this or gals like this are the leaders in their peer group. Everybody comes to them and, bites off a piece here, bites off a piece here. They're like piranhas, and they're just here. Those are typically the clients that I get. They'll come to me because they can dump on me and I'm not part of their inner circle. But they're so drained. It's like a horse going across a warm river in the Amazon. It might make it to the other end, but it went in white, but it's going to come out with chunks of meat out of it because life's piranhas, family, well, you're the best, you make the most money. I mean, a lot of us deal with that, and we have to put on this front, but it stresses you out, it hardens your heart, it drains you, your eyes get baggy, you lose your hair, and there's all these negative things, your testosterone's gone, and you just exist, and next thing you know, you're 50, 60 pounds overweight, you don't enjoy life, your kids were here, now they're gone, and you have nothing to show for it.
So we got about 3 minutes for our closing sponsor presentation and your final thought. But you mentioned John Maxwell. I just want to ask about what do you see in terms of leadership blind spots? Maxwell's law of the lid says the organization can't develop any further than the leader's ability to lead it. And he also talks about giving your skills 1 to 10, and those that are below a 5, you should delegate because they're never going to be a 10. And so there's people that aren't aware they're holding the organization back, and there's people trying to work on skills that are 3s or 4s, and they'll never be a 10. So talk about blind spots and lack of leader awareness for a couple of minutes, if you will.
Totally. I think there's 2 primary leadership blind spots. One, we forget to develop those beneath us. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying you have to have a one-to-one organized, structured mentorship, but just letting your steps mentor those that are coming up beneath you and getting them, being okay with them surpassing you, like being totally okay with that, because that's like nothing negative has ever come from launching somebody else's career past yours. And the second blind spot is focusing so much on our career path that we forgot about our career past, and we forget where we started and what it was like and what made us happy and where the fervor came from, because we're so focused on just moving forward. But I guarantee you, like if you just look at your leadership past, you could, based off where you're at now, so using today's mind for last decade's fervor, you'll get a lot further in the future.
Focus on your leadership path and your leadership past. Oh, I've never heard that. You heard it right here, Russ. Our sponsors make it possible for us to publish the magazine, to do live events around the country. And by the way, Phoenix, where you live, is on our radar. And to do these nonprofit exchange podcasts. Sponsor today is WordSprint. WordSprint helps you stay in touch with your tribe. They use mail, in the mail, U.S. mail, to have something in the hands of your donors, your sponsors, your tribe, so they remember you. It's called top of mind marketing. It's very unique, and there's decades of research behind the good message to the right person in the right rhythm. Now, a little bit of it needs to look good, but 30-30-30 is the right rhythm, the right message, the right person, and then it looks presentable. WordSprint, like fast, wordsprint.com. Click on the website. You can ask for a free consultation with Bill Gilmer and his team. They print and mail our magazine and help us stay in touch with our tribe at Center Vision Leadership Foundation for the last 4 years. And they're as good as they come in print, design, copywriting, doing the mailing services, and helping you stay in touch so your tribe always remembers you. So Dom, what kind of, give us a parting challenge or a thought to remember you by, and then Russ, if you'll close us out, we got about 3 minutes till we end up. So Dom, give us a closing thought, and then Russ will close us out today.
All right, parting thought or closing thought would be there's one thing that I have found that holds a lot of leadership back, and it's lack of forgiveness. So a challenge would be for you to think of somebody. It could be a child, it could be a spouse, it could be just somebody that you probably should talk to, just to kind of clear the air. And don't send a text first, call. And if that doesn't work, send a text. And don't ask a bunch of questions. Just say, you know what? I was thinking about you. I love you. I miss you. And I look forward to speaking with you. Something that's warm, something that will do that. And that'll take that weight off of your chest, and it'll allow you to lead in a more positive light.
Brilliant. I love what you're doing. Keep it up. I'm certainly going to follow with interest and look forward to seeing and reading more of your material, learning more from you, because all of us can grow. And so my admonition to nonprofit leaders out there who are watching this podcast is it boils down to choosing yourself. Then you get to the one thing, but it's choosing yourself. And Dom has some tools. We have tools here at Cinevision that can help you do that. So for Hugh and for Dom, I'd like to thank all of you for coming here. By the way, our friend Sandy Birkenmeyer is the editor for the magazine. And I'm sure we always request from our guests that they do a piece for the magazine for an upcoming issue. And so I don't know if you sprung that on you, but it's probably pretty good not to try to give people too much work to do so they don't go running in the other direction. Thank you for coming here. I'd like to thank you again. Thanks, Sandy, and all of the people, Bill Gilmer at WordSprint, who's one of the wonderful sponsors we have that make all of this possible. And I'd like to thank you nonprofit leaders who are out there every day in the trenches trying to make life better for other people who are less fortunate than us. And this is a universal circulation. As we give, we receive. Thank you for that effort, and come back and join us again next week.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you, Dom.
Thank you, gents.